Good evening, everyone. This is CA Akriti, a virtual CPE meeting on Management Accounting Insights, Public-Private Partnership and its importance in infrastructure projects. It is organized by Committee on Management Accounting of ICI and is hosted by Kurukshetra branch of NIRC of ICI. I welcome CA Deepak Bansal, Chairman of Kurukshetra branch of NIRC of ICI for welcome address. Please, sir.
Good evening to all. I welcome our honorable guest CA Nitin Suri ji, CA Pooja Makkar, Assistant General Manager Finance, Punjab Infrastructure Development Board, CA Akriti Arora, CA Gaurav Gupta ji, Vice Chairman Kurukshetra branch NIRC. I, CA Deepak Bansal, Chairman Kurukshetra branch NIRC of ICI, extend a very warm welcome from land of Gita and Mahabharata to everyone present here at virtual CPE meeting on Management Accounting Insights, Public-Private Partnership and its importance in infrastructure projects, organized by Committee on Management Accounting of ICI. I also welcome all the members of ICI present here to make this webinar worthwhile. Now I will halt my words and start with webinar and virtual meeting for the day. I guarantee your next few hours will be knowledgeable and memorable. Thank you for being a patient audience and hearing me. Let's start the webinar now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to welcome CA Pooja Makkar ji. She is chartered accountant with 10 years experience. She is alumni from Indian School of Business in Advanced Management Program in Infrastructure. She is currently working as Assistant General Manager with Punjab Infrastructure Development Board, which is the nodal agency for undertaking public-private partnership projects in Punjab. She is also working on feasibility and bid procurement projects on public-private partnership in the state of Punjab, which involves coordination among various government authorities, transaction advisors and private investors globally, along with looking after accounting and finance work. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Akriti. So let's begin. Today's topic is about the importance of PPP. PPP is slightly new to India. In 1990s, it started. India post-liberalization opted for having PPP for infrastructure projects in India. So you can say it's like 30 years of PPP in India. So PPP is still evolving. It has not evolved. There have been many contracts which have failed drastically. The success rate of PPP is 1 to 2%. It is still evolving. So to begin with, I would like to share the definition of PPP. Government of India, according to the Government of India, what is PPP? PPP is basically an arrangement between a government agency and a private player to undertake an infrastructure project. Infrastructure, I'm describing infrastructure as which involves a huge sum of money. It's not small 1 or 2 CR projects. It's more than 100 crores projects, 500, 10,000 crores projects. Government is undertaking these projects on PPP model. So PPP is a very complex transaction structure. In this PPP system, which is public-private partnership, there is a public sector, which is the government agencies. Like every state has a government agency. Like in Punjab, we have PIDB, where currently I'm working. So we undertake the PPP projects in the state of Punjab. So likewise, there are many PPP boards across these different states of India. So basically they are doing is we identify the project. The government identify a project that it has to be done for the progress of the state. Then we do the feasibility study. After feasibility study, we decide whether it has to be done on an EPC or a PPP model. So government can initiate a EPC project at its own cost. But why it is doing PPP? When it has lot of failure rate, success rate is just 1 to 2%. I undertake 10 projects over a time of 2 years span of time, and the success rate is 3 to 4 projects just. So why PPP? So for that we have to understand the stakeholders involved. Number one stakeholder is government sector. Number two is private sector. Number three is the public at large. So government, the main work of government is to administration, not business making. So that's why government identify the project and bring in a private player so that it do not have to invest so much of capital, and because government do not have that much capital, it has to diversify its capital to different sectors like healthcare. We have to provide healthcare, we have to provide education. So government cannot focus on the business side of the economy. So let's talk about the economy. So for growth of the economy, we need infrastructure. Infrastructure, if there is no infrastructure like roads, telecom, it's not there. So we can't achieve even 6% of GDP. Government every year projects 6%, 7% GDP growth in the GDP, but it is not achieving. Why? Because of poor infrastructure facilities. Where government wants to establish an industry, but there is no proper infrastructure. So where government is already in a fiscal deficit, budget deficit. So from where that investment is coming from? So what government does? Government identify project, then do the feasibility, then bring on a private player to invest. So that project, for example, road. I am taking about the roads. So roads are like the life of a road is mostly 20 to 25 years, then it has to be recarpeted. Roads are for forever. So government cannot invest a lot of money or a lot of time for that road, for the maintenance of road. It has to build, it is a continuous process to build roads like in different states and rurals. But to maintain that, so what government does, it brings a private player, awards the contract, or let's say 30 years, 40 years. Then it gives the right to the private player to monetize, because private player is investing a lot of sum. So it gives the right to the private player to collect that tolls, to recover its investment which he has initially invested. So they gives that right to the concessionaire to collect the tolls for over the period and certain other revenues also, so that which the cost which he has invested, he can recover from that. So the whole PPP revolves around three things. First is economic analysis, financial analysis, and value for money analysis. What comes under economic analysis? Whether it is useful for the society. If that project is not useful for the society, government is not going to invest that the manpower in the feasibility of the project. So it has to be useful for society. Then comes the financial analysis. Financial analysis involves whether the project is profitable for the private player or not, whether the project has the potential to generate revenues, whether those revenues are enough to give a reasonable return to the private player, because private player is not going to invest until and unless it sees a profit in the project. Why a private player will invest its manpower, its money, everything, when the project is not going to give its return? So it has to be financial viable for that private player. Then comes the most important thing, the value for money analysis. Value for money analysis, government can do it at its own level in EPC mode, but it decides to do it on PPP. Why? Because it is getting some value out of it. Value out of it, whether the government is able to give back it to the society or not in the form of social service. So value of money has to be there, not only from the government side but from the private sector as well. Private sector will have to get its return on investments. We do the capital budgeting. We chartered accountants are good at doing the capital budgeting. So similarly, we have to calculate a payback period to the private player. whether he will be able to get the amount of investment over a period of time. If it's not profitable, he will immediately exit, because PPP contracts have a exit option as well, in which the government has to pay huge sums to the private player when he exits from that particular contract. So government has to do a proper feasibility study to award this project. Then the PPP contracts are just not normal contracts. We call it as a concession agreement. My professor used to say that it's a marriage between a public player, that government, and the private sector. So it's type of a prenuptial agreement, that before entering into a marriage, you have to sign this agreement, and whenever you wish to exit from this marriage, you have to pay to the other party according to this agreement. So agreement is the concession agreement is the essence of triple P project. A good triple P project has to have a very, very good concession agreement. I think the reason for most of the cases which are pending in the arbitration courts today is a poor drafted concession agreement. So, like I started, that PPP is evolving over the time. So, the contract management is also evolving over a time. Like we are investing so much of research into triple P while drafting, while planning the transaction model, like whether we want to do DBFOT, whether we have to invest a VGF, like we have to take a certain percentage of revenues. So these contracts are evolving over a time. So I think the essence of triple P is a good concession agreement. It should clearly define the exit clauses, the termination payments, the events of defaults. Without proper defining, a triple P project cannot be successful. How good it is. So, the government. Now the next step is how a government chooses whether it wants to do a particular project on triple P. Government is good at planning, but government is not good at execution. So for that efficiency, it tries to bring it a private player. So I'm working for government side. So what are the advantages which a government sector has? A government sector, I'm good at getting a statutory clearances from different government departments. Like if I want to get a forest clearance for a road project or a ecotourism project, so government is good at it. Private player, it is very difficult for a private player to get forest clearances for projects like ecotourism. So from government side, we undertake the facilities like shifting of utilities and acquisition of land, then forest clearances, etc. Then when we have all these statutory clearances on record, then we draft agreement. Then we try to attract a private player so that he can invest so much and then pay something to the government, because the land still belongs to the government. Then I would like to highlight certain recent projects which government has done. During the last difficult period of COVID pandemic, government main focus was to provide healthcare to its public, to provide education, to provide good telecommunication facilities to the public. So where then government don't have the investment for like roads, etc. So in that term also a triple P project is essential. Like what would I like to say is it. Then I will also highlight one important thing. Government is also having this policy making cell, a different vertical there is Niti Aayog. They have a separate vertical for triple P projects only. They provide the guidance to different state departments with the standard bidding documents and evaluation of new policies, new structures, so that these triple P projects are successful over the time. More and more foreign investment and private players come in and work with the government to have more efficiency of infrastructures projects over the time. And I would also highlight that about the concession period. What is a concession period? Concession period is the total time frame over which a government wants to be in that particular contract. Like recently, there has been 99 years contracts entered by Government of India. There was a railway contract for 99 years. 99 years literally means handing over that particular site to the private player. And we have recently developed a exhibition center at Ludhiana that is again for 99 years. Why government is giving this project for such a long period of time? The reason behind is government has many other sectors to look for, just not to invest its manpower and investment for this. So it tries to stretch that time period so that the private player can recover its investment and that asset is maintained by the private player properly. So as such, PPP is evolving and it will be need of the hour. Government has recently introduced asset monetization scheme, which it is planning to execute by 2024. For that, government is calling back assets from different states so that it can be developed on triple P mode. It can bring private investments to develop those projects on triple P model. So from all the nutshell, the information which I have gathered is that triple P is going to be a major factor in the infrastructure growth for economy overall. So I would say that it is very much important for the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed very insightful and very simple to understand. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to call CA Nitin Suri ji, and he is chartered accountant by profession from the last 20 years. He has experience in the field of financial consultancy services on infrastructure projects to be implemented on public-private partnership basis. Eastern of India, namely establishment of silos on public-private partnership basis. He has also worked as finance and public-private partnership expert in India's flagship Smart Cities initiative. We welcome you, sir.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, ma'am. It's a real pleasure that I have been invited by Kurukshetra region to give my thoughts on the most important topic that is really coming up in the country and has already been mentioned by CA Pooja Makkad ma'am, that this is public-private partnership, its importance, its dynamics, how well so far we have been successful in getting our infrastructure project through this model and all those things. And I really thanks to CA Deepak Bansal ji for inviting me on this forum and giving me a platform to share my views. So I just introductionally, I just like to start that already much you can say has already been described by CA Pooja ma'am. Because she's already from the government side, and if I define myself, I am basically from the private side. So, and as an independent consultant, so I have worked with many consultancy firms like PwC, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, and we have done a lot of projects with PIDB also. when I was with Almonds. I have done some good projects with feedback also. And ma'am must also remember that I have really worked with Mr. Bal sir also. He
He's my
knows me.
boss, sir.
Yeah, so he knows me quite well. So,
Okay.
so I have already means whenever I used to visit Chandigarh for my projects, I always used to have a visit with him because he always means offer a good cup of tea with some good snacks. So I always fond of meeting Mr. Sir on that day. So now on a serious note. So to begin with, broadly in detail has already been shared by ma'am. So now I just want to come up with a little bit more on the, you can say on the concept wise, how it works, what are the structures, what are the models, how it's work basically, what are the sectors basically, and what exactly a chartered accountant, because chartered accountant traditionally has been more into a kind of a role which is governed into assurance like audits or taxations and all those stuff. But now, since last few years, new areas have also come up for a CA to participate. So this is one of the areas how a chartered accountant can also be involved into this sector. So I just share a small presentation. Hope this presentation is means readable and viewed to all. Hello.
Yes, it's visible to me. I think.
Yes, sir, it
Okay.
is visible, sir.
Yes, it will be
Okay,
visible.
okay.
Also,
Wait,
if any of the participants, if they want to put their questions, they can ask after your session, sir.
Sure, ma'am. Most welcome. I will be really obliged to try to satisfy whatever queries the members will have on my presentation and on this particular aspect. So I just it's a basically, as that word says, it's basically a public-private partnership. So the most important thing that is coming up is the partnership. So partnership here means like two entities, basically a public and a private, is joining hands. So why they are joining hands is basically to come up into a kind of a model or a mode for a successful you can say implementation of an infrastructure project. So if you go by the definition of what I have mentioned here, is like public-private partnerships involve collaboration between a government agency and a private sector company that can be used to finance, build and operate projects. So if you just means look words by word in this definition, it's a kind of a collaboration between a government agency. Government agency can be a state government, it could be a central government, it could be a central PSU, government PSUs who have come up with a tender, and it could be a private sector company, means a private sector which doesn't have any government holdings. And when they come up into a kind of a partnership, the main purpose will be that to finance, to build and to operate an infrastructure projects. So basically, if you go a little far, what kind of infrastructure projects can come up, I have put up, these are the typical sectors basically. You all guys will be really reading in the news also and all those things, that these are the real sectors in which a public-private partnership model has been implicated or replicated, like broadly roads and highways, railways, private rail operations, under telecommunications, development of smart cities, under education sector. Okay. Now it's okay? Yeah. So I was just continuing what are the sectors basically where private sector public PPP model can be used is under health sector, which is very important these days, as we have already seen and described by Pooja ma'am also, like because of COVID or all those issues, really when we face scarcity of hospitals and diagnostic centers. So this could be one of the sectors that could be coming up more into into a PPP mode in near future. And then most importantly, again, a solid waste management. So roads and highways and railways are the typically, you can see the traditional sectors where PPP model was introduced post liberalization in 1990, and where it was felt that there is a need to bring a private sector into this industry so that to have leverage their finance capabilities, their you can say operational capabilities. Then during the course of experiences and success that we had in these sectors, we went further into private rail operations, which is a recent one. Like we have introduced, like there could be a private, now some routes have been identified in India which could be run by the private rail operators. Then smart cities is a major topic, like 100 smart cities have already been identified which could be developed through, and under this one of the component was to develop the particular infrastructure projects through PPP. So these are the broad sectors. I just wanted to have a, you can say a kind of a knowledge to you that these are the sectors basically where we will be coming up with a PPP mode. Now we again going back to the slides I have started. So that's what I was saying. What is PPP now? PPP means a government agency collaboration with a private sector company to finance, build and operate. It could be an either an infrastructure road sector project, or it could be a typical railway project. It could be a telecommunication project like laying down of fibers, which is going on a very important PPP model. Or it could be an education sector like building of colleges or some smart classrooms, major like health building of medical colleges or good colleges. And then solid waste management. Solid waste management could be like building up of the projects which could really clean the society, as we have already seen through the Swachh Bharat mission, like which is so much important, a flagship program into India. So these are the broad projects where PPP, the partnership can be broadened. So if you look into my diagram, which I have said, it's a public came into a collaboration with private to undertake a public works project formally, and the risk and responsibilities by each of them. Now I just move forward a little bit. So this is basically what is a PPP. So PPP, like if you continuing to my earlier definition and what that Pooja ma'am has also said in his introductory remarks, that it needs all these factors to be taken into consideration to get into a good PPP project. As Bab has said that the success rate of public-private partnerships in India is just 1 to 2%. And the one of the reasons for this low success, and though a very important mode of implementation, is because under each of these heads we are a little bit failing. Means if we look at the first of the thing is planning. Planning is basically I have to identify a particular project. So I have to identify a project in the sense that whether this project can come up on a public-private partnership or not. Then I have to look whether in a particular state or in a particular region I can come up with a particular project, because depending upon states to states, some of the projects can be taken up in a particular state, some of the projects can't be taken up in a particular state. So I have to really plan something that whether this project is really, or it's something so much, see, sometimes there's a like so much importance is of a public project is there that we can't, because public-private partnership project takes some little longer time to come to a kind of a shape, because we have to do a bid process management, we have to do feasibility studies, we have to float the tenders, then we have to identify a private investor. Once he's on a board, then he has to arrange the finance, then the construction of that particular project starts. But sometimes, so this generally takes a kind of a 1 to 2 years kind of a thing for a project to get into a shape. So I have to really plan at my initial stage whether I need public-private partnership or this project can be done by government only, because there is a need, there is an urgency. Like if a particular hospital is going to be constructed because of COVID, I can't wait for maybe for a PPP model to run. So I can immediately, if I have a land, if I have a funds available from the government side, I can start building up a small hospitals to cater to immediate medical needs. Then the most important other factor which really comes in financing. Financing is, see, why public-private partnership is there, because government always have a limited funds. So government always feel that the best course of infrastructure development and economic development of a country is not through its own funds, rather to involve private sector and to get revenue from the project. Basically, it doesn't want that government to fund 100% and then there is no revenue. So best thing is no revenue contribution from the government, but to make such a model, such a good project that when it is implemented and it's used by the private people, they pay for some revenue, or which is really called user fees in a PPP project, like in a roads and highways project. If we are planning to use a good toll, good road project, good roads basically, to save my time, to save my journey, to have a good least vehicle maintenance. So I need good roads, and if I need good roads, I need financing. And to need financing is basically, it could be possible either if government is willing to fund, or if I make a road from the private funds, and private people will expect the users to pay to use that road, and that is actually in the form of a toll revenue. That is another very important factor that is really critical in a PPP project is the designing. Because many a times, and designing is basically being done by the technical experts, where a detailed project report is basically prepared, and they have to take into considerations many factors. Basically, a typical good design, that it is not faltered, and they also have to take into considerations about the land availability, about the clearances that are required basically in a particular project. Sometimes a particular project requires clearances from the environmental point of view, from the forest point of view, whether that can be available or not. Basically, these are helpful in identifying and making a project successful and timely completed. If I am not properly designing and taking all these factors into consideration at initial stage, I will always falter, because I may not be able to procure 100% land. And in that case, there could be a delay in project execution, resulting in unnecessary cost escalations. And that is the real factor which recently Prime Minister has also focused in one of its speeches, that they are coming up with the Gati infrastructure. Like, there should be a kind of a interrelationship between everything, even in a project and in the departments also, said there is no delay in successful implementation of a project. Project has to be completed on a time frame, then it's actually a real useful to the society. Then is the building. Buildings are basically interconnected with a kind of a designing phase only, like how I am trying to design a particular project and whether I am able to build that project. That is the construction period. Basically, within the prescribed period, I am able to construct, I am able to deploy all my technical resources. So all these things take into consideration for the timely completion of the project. Then once the project is completed, constructed, then it is put to use. Then there comes the role of an operating. How I will have to operate that project, basically. How I am to get the revenue from this project which I have already constructed. See, no private player will come into a project if he is not able to get decent returns on his investment. Because a public-private partnership, though government is there to support certain percentage of the capex, but most of the capex has to be funded by the private player only. So how the funded can be done is either through banks or through his own equity. So if he is putting up his money in form of his own equity, then he will definitely expect a decent returns on his equity. So like for a typical road and highways project, that project will only be successful if he is going to get back decent toll revenues. Like nowadays we are seeing, like because of farmers agitation and all those things, all the toll plazas on NH1 are being stopped from collecting the tolls. So there is a significant risk of these kind of things also that I have to take into consideration. And what ma'am said was these factors can be considered while I am framing a concession agreement that I will be describing in my next slides. So once I am comfortable with my operating plan, then I have to make sure that my highway is maintained properly. Proper routine maintenance, proper periodic maintenance is being done so that I am able to give a good quality asset to public for its use. It should not that I am taking money from them, but I am giving a substandard kind of asset to be used by the public. So in all these are very critical factors, starting from planning, identifying a project, envisaging a project, its financing parameters tying up, then designing and building, then coming up to operating, and then in the end, the real factor is the maintenance. So all these things I have to take into consideration before I am planning a PPP project. Moving forward. So typically, if you look, you must have also read into some of the publications. These are the typical models that are being used in the Indian scenario. Like BOT, like build, own, transfer. Here means the private player will build the project. He will own the project for a particular period, which is generally called a concession period, which is given by the government depending upon the feasibility of the project. And after completion of that concession period, which could be 15 years, 20 years, I have to transfer that asset back to the government agency. Then there is a boot, basically. Here I am going to build, own, operate also, and I have to transfer it back to the government. Then the third model, which is the most prevalent model these days, is basically I have also given a freedom to a private player to design as per his will. Basic parameters I will be defining in the concession agreement, but in the end, he is being given a kind of a freedom or leverage to whatever innovations he wants to put up in his infrastructure project. He can do that to make that project successful, cost effective, environmental effective, and which can bring good returns. So this is the important component difference between BOT or boot is like here I am also giving him a freedom of design also. Design, build. Finance also he has to do, operate, and then again he has to transfer back to the government. Then the third model is basically where I am just building, owning and operate. I don't need to transfer. So the typical example which I recently can share with you is a project on which I am working recently is for Food Corporation of India, where we are constructing silos, which is silos are basically to the storage spaces for the food grains. So this is a big project which is coming up in India. It is on 249 locations, and it is coming up under two modes basically, which are DBFO and DBFOT. So basically BOO, if I can include design build also, here is like I will be asking a private player to design a silo, build a silo, own the silo, operate the silo, and take away that silo. I am not interested in that silo after 20-25 years. Whatever he can do, he can do. My arrangement with that particular player will be because DBFO is basically, he also has to procure the land. So this is his land. On his own land he is constructing, but he is securing the food grains. What is the government's custody? So that is the model, PPP model. Government is giving me the food grains and government is giving me the storage charges to store that food grains. The last one is an OMT. OMT is basically where the project has already been built up. It has already been constructed. So a private investor has been called in to operate, to maintain, and then to transfer the project. So these are the familiar, there are many more also, but these are the most prevalent common concepts that we are using right now in India. So if you just look at what are the advantages and disadvantages of undertaking a PPP, so first I am just looking at the benefits. The most important benefit why I take a PPP is better infrastructure solutions than an indicative that is wholly public or wholly private. See, public, it's not that public infrastructure can't come up, government cannot construct a project, but government will always construct a project like what DDA is doing right now. A typical a housing project can be constructed by a DDA. But when you give a project to a private developer, he will little bit construct a project in a little better designing, better solutions. So that's why they want a private player to come in to give him a better infrastructure solutions. Then is because of a separate faster project completions and reduce delays on infrastructure projects. See, when a government is doing a particular project, he is already burdened with so many projects. But when he give that particular project to a particular investor who is going to just do work on that particular project, so there will be timely completions and there will be less delays in completion of the projects. That we have already seen in the earlier slides, how important is critical is for the timely completion of the project. Then if you move on the third one, the return on investment might be greater than projects with traditional, which are all private or all government fulfillment, because here what is basically is happening is that government is also coming up with some sort of incentive, some sort of support. So if like in a typical model which is being run entirely by the private, where he has to 100% he has to fund up to his own funds and he is not going to get any form of a revenue, then his returns could be little less. But when there is a public-private partnership where a particular project is envisaged by the government and a private investor is being called in, definitely there is a greater chance, because government can offer him some sort of a grant, which is basically called like a cash subsidy or a cash support to finance some portion of his capex. Like if a capex is basically my 100, so generally traditionally if it's an all private project in a typical debt equity ratio of 70:30, entire 70 either has to come from financial institutions or 30 has to come from the government, from the private side through his own equity. But if government is coming up in form of some support, like some 20%, 30%, depending upon the project viability, then the burden of tying up the financial close on the private player will be reduced by that 30%. So basically, if it's a 100 rupee project, and if I am just putting a government support of 30, the balance 70 rupees only now I have to tie up instead of 100. So on that, now my investment, which earlier was used to be 30 rupees, will now just be only 21. So whatever returns I am going to get earlier on 30, now I will be getting on my 21 rupees investment. Definitely my returns will increase. Then, as already mentioned in my earlier slide, that I have to do a proper planning, designing. So all the risks basically are appraised early. And what is the real risk? Risk could be land risk, whether land is fully available to come up with infrastructure projects. What could be the other clearances that I needs to get? Some telephonic lines, some gas pipelines are going on. All these risks will be identified beforehand, and private player will approach the government agency to help him out to tie up with those respective agencies so that proper clearances can be taken place and my project comes to construction stage on time. Now the major disadvantage is basically it increases the government costs. See, why increase the government cost is basically government can raise money from the market at a little cheap source of funds, could be 5%, 6%, depending upon the government, the market rate which is coming up through RBI. But when it comes to the private PPP mode, then basically he has to satisfy the private investor's appetite, his return on equity, and what the investor also has to pay to the financial institutions. So if we look at the weighted cost of capital, generally it comes around like 15 to 16%, which is quite high as compared to what government can fund through its own funds, which could be much less than 8 to 9%. That's why sometimes value for money analysis is being done to really capture whether this project could be really viable to come up with such expensive costs or not. Then it's limit the competitiveness required for cost-effective partnering. See, why cost-effective is basically like if I am given a rights to design, build a project on a private investor, so and he come up with a certain cost, then on that cost, if he is able to determine this much revenue I need, then government may not have that much say in curtailing why you are coming up with 100 crore rupees project, or why not 50 crore, why not 150 crores, because then his innovative solutions could be cost benefit, it could be sometimes cost detrimental also. Then profits of the projects can vary depending upon the assumed risk, the level of competition and the complexities that already I have explained earlier also, that more risky the project, more it could be costly for the government. Then his returns, his expectations could be very high from this project if he is expecting less revenue from that project. See, private investor will always come up in a project if he is able to get a good returns over a period of time. If he finds himself that he is not going to get good returns, then definitely he will not be interested. That's why most of the public-private partnership projects fail, because we don't really get into a good revenue mechanism for these private people to get. And if government has to fund entirely through its own funds, then the best thing is that government can itself take up a particular project. If the expertise in the partnership lies heavily on the private side, the government already explained earlier, like if entirely design build is given to the private player, then government may not have that much kind of a role in challenging why this design, why not this design. See, government will always gives the basic parameters that should be met, but over and above that, then the freedom is basically given to the private investor. So these are the broad advantage, disadvantage that can be theoretically considered. But again, in the end, if you look at the present Indian scenario where we are expecting to come up with a kind of an investment that is something $143 trillion kind of investment, if I have to put up in next 5 years. So definitely I need a kind of a good revenue mechanism. So good revenue mechanism will be possible only when I am able to come up with a good infrastructure projects, good innovative projects which public are willing to use. And if it's a good project, people will be willing to pay also. If people are willing to pay, means I will be getting the revenue from the projects. So that will make government's job more easy, because government these days have to spend lot of things from its fiscal budget on vaccinations, like these days happening, on the medical, other subsidies. So government needs some kind of a space. So ultimate, you can say the story lies that I have to make a good innovative model, PPP model, good successful model, so that my rate of success, which is 1 to 2%, could move little higher. Then I move to a typical PPP model. How basically it looks like. See, already I have just shared in my initial slides that there are two broad entities which are basically present in a PPP model: a public sector client and a private entity. So now I move to, if I lose the keys first, a public sector client could be like, if I go to Pooja ma'am's a PIDB. PIDB is a nodal agency which is implementing the entire PPP projects in the state of Punjab. So if a particular project, whether it's a roads and highway project, or it's a solid waste, or some smart city solutions, if it is on a PPP basis, that project has to come routed through PIDB. So what PIDB will do, it will come up with a project, it will bid that project in the market, tender is floated, which I will be explaining in my next slide. A private entity, which is basically called a concessionaire, will be selected. So what private concessionaire's role will be, they will be awarded a kind of a contract. Contract here will be an operations and maintenance contract to operate that particular project. How? So what private sector, public sector will be doing? Public sector will be doing some sort of concessions to the private entity to construct and operate that project. What kind of concession could be? That it could be giving the private player a parcel of land which is owned by the government to construct a particular project, operate that project for a particular period, earn the revenue, and then transfer that asset back to the government. Concession payments could also be in a form of a grant, which I have mentioned earlier also. If a project is not viable, private public sector, the client can come up with a solution that I could be offering some sort of a grant to you. So once a private sector is identified and operations maintenance contract is tied up, then what he has to do is basically he has to do a financial closure. He has to look for the financing. How the financing can come either through equity providers, that is his own equity, or it can come through the form of a debt which he can easily raise from the financial institutions. What could be the debt providers he has to do? He has to repay the interest and the principal on the debt component which he has taken to finance his own project, and for his own investment, whatever balance is left in form of dividend, that he can take back as his own return from the money which he has invested from his own funds. So this is a typical, like a public, private, then an operations contract is entered, then he has to finance that project from the debt, then partly he has to finance that project from the equity. So before I go to this risk allocation, so this is basically a transaction flow in a PPP project. Just 1 second, sir. So broadly, a typical PPP project is, you can say, are divided into 2 phases. Phase 1 is, you can say, analysis. That if you look at the first slide which I shared with you, where it said planning, basically. So this is basically a kind of a phase 1, which is analysis. I have to assess the PPP options, and then I have to define a transaction structure. Like what is going to be my transaction structure? Like whether it will be through a government, private, it could be a kind of a BOT project. I have to come up, either have to come up with a DBFOT project, or it's going to be a pure OMT project. Means if project is already been constructed, it is in a usable stage. Now I only needs a private investor who could just come up, do operations, maintenance. So all these options will be studied. Then I will, and on that basis, my risk allocation, which I just moved back, where I have said on a typical, you can say, type of a project, and these are the options like asset ownership, OMT, capital investment, commercial risk, duration, whose risk is basically in a PPP project, whether between the government or between the private. So that I will be coming up later. So again, coming back to this slide, which says that I will be defining my transaction structure, I will be doing my risk allocation, and what is going to be my investment program. Investment program is whether I have sufficient funds in case a private investor comes up seeking grant kind of a thing for me, whether I will be able to do that kind of, if not, then I have to approach my, you can say private, my government agencies, like my finance department, to say that a particular project is coming up. I could be needing a kind of a support from your side, from the, it could be a budgetary support, or it could be a transfer from some funds, everything. So I will be planning entirely that project should run smoothly. It should not happen that I have awarded the project and now I am finding a crisis through payment of user charges or whatever I have to pay to a private investor. So I have to really tight up my funds also. Means because over the 20-25 years, I will also have to pay something to the government, to the private investor. Then the phase which comes up is the transaction structuring. Once I have identified like a particular project is coming up in the market, which if a road sector agency has come up that this particular project is to be coming up, they will approach the appropriate agency in the state. If it is a national project, they will approach like National Highway Authority of India. If it is a state project, they will approach their respective state agencies. Like in the state of Punjab, since Madam is already here, so either through Punjab Roads and Bridges Development or PWD, Punjab PWD, they will be coming up with the roads. So they will be coming up with a proposal to PIDB that we are planning to come up this particular project on a PPP basis. Then PIDB will say, okay, you can do. Then they will just come up with a kind of a market to investors. A road show is to be, you can say, carried out these days. Like a big project is coming up in the state of Punjab. So to get an idea from the market at how many players could be interested. Like in a smart city projects, when 100 smart cities were to be launched, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs launched a big roadshow that 100 smart cities are coming up in different states. So this could be the funding model. All are interested to participate. They can come up. This could be the benefits that could be coming up. So kind of a roadshow is to be carried out by the government department to gauge the interest of the investor, to show them that this is a particular project coming up. This is the benefits of that project. These are the concessions that could be given up to an investor. The importance for public at a large, what could be there. So all these kind of transactions, these activities are generally being done before a project is basically tendered out. Then is basically comes up like because once I had an idea from the market that, okay, investors will be coming up, these are their demands, these are their suggestions that to make a good PPP project, then I will try to prepare my own PPP contract. PPP contract will generally involve like what will be my service standards, what are my performance targets, what is going to be my payment procedures, what are the penalties if I have not operating and maintaining as per my PPP contract, or rather penalties for the government also if they are not doing the obligations for which they are bound to do, and then the monitoring. So PPP contract, you can say, is the real, you can say, a lifeline for successful PPP project. If I am not able to prepare a good PPP contract, if I am not able to identify key risk allocations, means what private sector is expected to do, what public sector is expected to do, what are going to be my performance targets, what is going to be my standards on which I have to operate and maintain the project, then my PPP project will always going to be in a problem. And what it will result in a kind of an arbitrations, which will unnecessarily result in a delay in the project. And most of the arbitrations are such that it will always put an extra burden on the government itself. So once I am able to prepare a good PPP contract, once I am very clear on my terms and conditions, then I will do putting that project into the market. How I will put the project in the market? I will be floating a tender. So when I will be floating a tender, the major documents that will be coming up in the market, if you look at any government side, they will always be coming up with a request for proposal document, model concession agreement, feasibility study report, schedules forming part of the agreement. So these are the typical documents that are basically being prepared at the time of tendering stage. So now if I look at the flow, just revise in a way, I will assess my PPP option. I will define my transaction structure, like how it will be moving in, like how I am going to arrange my funds also, and how typically the project financing will be arranged. Then I will go to the market to test that project in the market, whether this project could be feasible, could be successfully bidded out. I don't want a kind of a project which should come up in the market, because all these things takes time. A typical transaction, a PPP transaction, generally takes 5 to 6 months. And if it's if I'm seeking some funds from the government, because government will also take some time to evaluate the proposals of that particular project, like if defining transaction structure or PPP option is basically a pre-feasibility stage also, like I have to do, like a particular, basically, I can look at a transaction advisor is being appointed to assist the government department basically to undertake this entire process. Transaction advisor or a consultant basically is being appointed by the government agency or the respective department to assess and do all these analysis on behalf of the government. They will assess the PPP options also. They will identify the transaction structure. They will prepare a kind of a brief pre-feasibility report. They will take it back to the government to discuss, this is the feasibility of this project coming up. If they will find that project is feasible, it could be marketed, could be sold out in the market to a private investor, definitely it will come up. Otherwise, again, a transaction structure will be redefined, like, okay, bring in more money from the government to support the project, give some kind of an incentives, some real estate kind of incentives on the project structure. So all these options can be considered to define a transaction structure so that investors are lured for successful bidding of this project. Because if my project is successfully bidded in a time frame manner, which is 3 to 5 months, I will always be in a good frame of mind that my project will be successfully completed. Once the private investor is satisfied that his returns are tied up safely, he will immediately do the construction, all those parts, because technology wise, India is quite now well versed with the latest technologies, latest innovations. So construction activities and all those things, generally there is not much of a delay. Delay will always happens when my project is not being prepared or planned properly. I have a very vague kind of terms and conditions being defined in the contract. And when private investor feel that he is not getting a good support from the government for which he is entitled to, then definitely he will also try to just drag his feet out of this project. So it's then once we are satisfied, we will come up with the tender in the market. So tender means the technical evaluation will be done. Once a technical evaluation is done on the bids, whosoever are qualified, their financial bids will be opened. Once the financial bids are opened, whosoever is a successful bidder, he will be called in. Like if we just look at the latest example of Air India disinvestment, where basically 2 bidders were there basically in the end. So Tatas were the preferred bidders. So this entire process of disinvestment was also take place in this transaction flow only. Options would have been studied. That's why there was continuous delay into this disinvestment process. It was not getting successful. Like how I am going to get a private investor on board? What could be the concessions? What could be the incentives that I could be giving him to a private player? Once that was done, it was decided. We got 2 bids. Tatas were declared the successful bidders. So the deal was successfully closed. So this gives immense satisfaction to the government also. So this is a broad transaction flow in a PPP project. Minor changes could be there depending upon department to department, state to state, project to project. But broadly, these are the 6 steps that needs to be considered, needs to be taken care of for successful completion of a transaction. Now, to prepare a good PPP contract, most important thing I need is the risk allocation. Like if there is so what are the modes under which I need to consider whose ownership the asset is going to be? Who is going to operate and maintain? Who is responsible for capital investment? Capital investment is basically the capex, the cost which I need to complete my project, the construction of the project. Where is the commercial risk? Who is going to bear? And the duration. So if I look at the broad models which I shared you earlier, there was a management contract. Management contract is basically who is going to manage is basically asset ownership apart from a private project is always going to be, or in a DBFOO board is always going to be under the public. I have to construct, I have to develop a project, I will operate, I will maintain, but at the end of the concession period or the life of the project for which I am being given the concession, ownership goes back to the government agency. Like in a road project, that road for 20 years, I have got the concession to operate and maintain, but after 20 years, that portion of the road, that assets which I have created on that road, the ownership lies with the authority or with the government. Now, operate and maintain. If a private partner is there, irrespective of the type of the project, the responsibility is always will be the private. That's why this is the precisely the reason why I am coming up with a public-private partnership project. Is basically a private player should be called in to successfully operate and maintain the project. Capital investment is always will be the responsibility of the private only under the management, which is the government project. It's with the public. Rest all responsibility of the capital investment is with the private. Though government can come up with a kind of a support, like I don't know right now because being a CA, not much into the practice, so I don't know which accounting standard will government will take into consideration on the government grants. So, but that government grant is here. I need to consider if a particular transaction is being considered through being funded by the government. Then is the commercial risk. Commercial risk again, because my responsibility is to operate and maintain. So the commercial risk will always be with the private. Like if I take an example of roads and highways, the commercial risk is to collection of the toll revenue. Now the toll revenue, the major factor on which the toll revenue is dependent on the traffic. How much vehicles, the category of vehicles like cars, trucks, heavy commercial vehicles are moving, flying on that highway. That will give me what kind of toll revenue I is going to expect on that particular highway. A traffic study is generally being conducted by the traffic expert. But on actually when it comes to the ground, there could be a situations where I could be lagging far behind my projected traffic. See, I have bidded on the basis of some projections. See, all PPP projects are basically formulated on the basis of projections. How smartly I have projected is also one of the reasons for successful completion of the project. Mitigating that commercial risk needs to be considered in a good PPP contract. Like in case my actual revenue falls from the projected revenue, how government can support me? See, because at the end of the day, if I am not earning something, I will not be able to pay back to the banks, to the financial institutions. If I am not able to pay back to the banks, my account will definitely go into a default. And when it goes into a default, all sort of procedures then will start taking place. So I have to bear that commercial risk. So see, that's why government is so keen on private partnership is, apart from giving him the asset ownership, rest all the broadly the risks he has transferred back to the private. He has to construct the project. He has to operate the project. He has to maintain the project. He has to earn also from that project. So much responsibilities are being given. But a good PPP project is always where government is always there to support. Means government should not think in a way, now I have given this project to a private, I am out of this project. Some responsibilities like which are best, which can be mitigated by the government, that needs to be taken by the government. Like land acquisition. Government only can acquire the land. If a private player is being asked to acquire a particular parcel of land, there will always be chaos in the market. Like many people will raise questions why a private player is coming up and why they are owning the land. Though some PP projects are there where land is also to be the responsibility of to be acquired by the private player, like a project which I am doing is construction of a silo, where in a particular mode that land responsibility is also of the private player. Then he has to take clearances of some permits, some fire conditions, installation of generators, electricity lines and all those things. Though the responsibility is of the private player, but government needs to come and support that private player. He has to facilitate the, you can say, a bond between that private player and the respective government departments. So risk allocation, once I am identified, cleared, whose responsibility is this, I will be able to make a very good PPP contract, which is the backbone of any successful PPP project. Most of the projects are such where I am not clear, then it goes into litigations, then from litigations project is being stopped, then either of the parties moves to arbitration. Now, these are the sectors which I have already identified. The key sectors like roads and highways, I have already described, much like a toll project is there. Now, recently, the government of India has come up with a big, to give a push to monetization. They have come up with a TOT model. There is the toll, own and transfer. Basically, government is bidding particular road projects which are already being constructed through a bundle. So they are creating a kind of a bundle of road projects in which some will be very lucrative, some could be little bit not lucrative. So a bundle is being created where X amount of revenue is being monetized by a private player, and they are sharing an upfront kind of a revenue. It could be like some big amount in crores can be come up that will be given to the government. So government will be getting a good handsome amount of money upfront through this model, which can be used further to finance those projects which are already distressed under not coming up, not meeting the targets, which are already falling back because of some of the issues. Railways always can say on a PPP, like I have to build a particular line, so all those things. But most importantly, the real model which is coming up these days is even the private rail operations, where some 100 routes have been identified, which were bidded out recently. Some 3-4 routes were bidded out. Why I was putting much emphasis on the PPP contract was because initially this project has not met with a good success, because not many bids were received, and government has so far decided to shelve off for time being private rail operations, and they are working on the contract part. What kind of concessions could be given further to the private players so that they can come up good numbers. And so under this model, basically the routes will be privatized. The trains will be allowed to run. But again, since I can't get the ownership of that rail line, basically, again for a particular period I have to do, and then I have to do work as per some of the guidelines, some of the standards of the Indian Railways. Telecommunications, biggest sector which is coming up on the PPP is laying down of a fiber. Like we were working on a project for Gurgaon Municipal Corporation, where it was like most of the smart cities are basically come up with this laying down of fibers, like underground particular fiber, like of a Jio or of other agencies are being coming up. So like some of the 2 or 3 under different chambers you are being asked to lay down the fiber, and 1 or 2 is given to the private operator to run its own operations, and 1 or 2 fiber lanes are given to the government to bid out in the later stage. Then the most flagship project, which was now it's already 3-4 years old, was the smart city projects. A big 1,000 crores per smart city. So if you multiply by 100, kind of a 1 lakh crore kind of an investment program was there, in which it was envisaged that some of the good projects can be taken up on public-private partnership basis. Then recently the good sector which is coming up is because of lack of funds from the government. Basically, the government schools are being given up on the public-private partnership basis. They are being allowed by the private players so to take up that land, to come up with good schools, good innovations, good classrooms, good hygienes, so that at a little concessional fee structure. So that's why students from the deprived sections can also be allowed to study in a good environment. Then the very important sector which could be coming up in the near future is, and not in the near future, is already coming up, is the health sector, where more and more hospitals, more and more health facilities needs to be created to cater to the ongoing or the future health concerns that can come up. As we have already seen for last 2 years, the entire world has been hit by a pandemic, and there is not a single country in the world who were able to cope up on the health front, be it developed countries or be on a developing country like ours. So every country faced the challenge on the health front. So why the challenge was there? Basically, our entire health sector was you can say, used up. There was not much investment in the health sector. No private players were asked to put up their investments because government, like in Delhi itself, you have only one good government hospital, AIIMS. I don't find much or other good hospitals where you can say it's a government hospital. Though you have a private chains, then private chains will have always their own kind of tariff and where, because depending upon the infrastructure investment, they will charge accordingly as a private model. But if you come up with a good PPP model where government is also there, some checks and pulls and balances can always be there, where people can be treated at a concessional rates. I will not say a free of cost, but because see, if I am moving to a free kind of a model, I will not be able to maintain my asset. That is very sure. So because government at some point of time will always say that my you can say deployment to a particular sector is full. Now I will not be able to devote much more into this sector. So now you have to do on your own. So how, from where the funds can come from a state government, either through a budget or from the taxes, says something. But if I am not able to charge something from the people, then I will not be able to meet my operations cost. So that's why it's always good to have some concessions, some revenue model there, so that I'm able to at least maintain my project. Then medical colleges it needs to be constructed along with the hospitals. The most important thing is the diagnostic centers, which can offer a good concessional rate of tests can be given up. So these are, and the last one is a solid waste management, where you need to have a clean society. You need good bins to be installed. You need a good, you can say, waste management practices could be there. So all these sectors are there. There could be many more sectors which we can envisage where public-private partnership model can be there. So these are the broad areas which we can think that public-private partnership can easily be successful. And it is being successful now. It's not that, because see, once if we have a big investment target to be achieved, we need finance, we need private people also to come up to support the government, and that can only be done through a PPP model, where I fully say that it's not always private or it's not always government. It has to be a kind of a partnership. That was my first slide, which I said that it has to be a kind of a partnership. Both should be clear of their roles and responsibilities. Everyone should know in a particular project what is his responsibilities, what is his responsibilities. And that can only be come up if I have a good, clear, defined PPP contract, which I have already described in my earlier slides. Now I just have a kind of a, what could be a role of a chartered accountant? See, because chartered accountants earlier also traditionally, like when I also started my career, I was also went to a audit firm to do internal audits and stat audits and all those things. But once I got appointed into an infrastructure consultancy firm. So since then, since 2003, for last 18 years, I am into this sector only, leaving my traditional kind of a role which the CS play. So in most of the infrastructure consultancy projects tendered out by various ministries, government departments at center or state level, or by multilateral funding agencies, there is a requirement of a financial expert as a part of a large infrastructure team. So what is basically meant here is, like, if I am coming up with a good infrastructure project, so the tendering has to be done at a 2 stages. One is like when I am going to do the initial planning, designing of PPP option study, feasibility option study. Government or the department who is coming up with a project always needs a kind of an idea of how I am going to come up. So for this, they will always appoint a consultant. So consultant or a transaction advisor. If it is a study of entire detail, and what they will do, what they will come up in the end, the output, the deliverable will be a detailed project report will be prepared for a particular project. For every project, this is a must. For every PPP project, this is a must that I have to prepare a detailed project report. So government will always need a detailed project report in its portfolio, then only they will be able to come up with the actual tendering project. So for this preparation of detailed project report, always a consultant. Consultant could be a technical firm, like many technical consultancy firms are being in India. There are big management consultancy firms like PricewaterhouseCoopers is there, EY, Deloitte, KPMG, Feedback Ventures. Then we have IPE Global. So Grant Thornton. All these firms basically participate, and then there are many technical good firms like some ACOM or Aegis or ICT Technocrats, very much big consultancy firms. So they always come up, participate in a project as a consultant or a transaction advisor. So then how this technical firm will come up, they will always have a panel of a team where there could be a technical experts to study and to prepare the technical report. Then there's always a need of a legal expert to draft a contractual part. Then there is a requirement of a financial expert. And then there is a requirement of a procurement expert. Procurement role is to prepare the bid documents, overall move the tendering process, and to select the private investor. So the role of a chartered accountant comes as a financial expert. In every team, most of the teams, there is a requirement of a financial expert, and the qualifications of a financial expert is basically, depending upon the size and nature of the project, is basically he could be a chartered accountant, he could be a cost accountant, he could be an MBA finance. So either of these can participate in a big infrastructure project as a consultant. And what his responsibilities in this entire scheme of things will be? He will be responsible for preparation of financial analysis reports. Basically, once the technical study is being done, then a feasibility report, the financial feasibility report is prepared, where a financial expert needs to understand what could be my financing options, what could be my revenue options, how much expenditure I have to incur during the period, and in the end he has to come up with the financial ratios, like what is my debt service coverage ratio, what is my internal return. So all these things he has to plan, and he has to prepare and work in a feasibility report. So once he is done with this, so this basically all these things will include is he has to do financial due diligence. As I have already explained earlier, that financial due diligence he has to do, like he has to estimate, like if a project is coming up like 100 crore and only 80 crores revenue is expecting. So how I'm going to fund that shortfall of 20 crores? So one option could be like he try to reduce some capex. He can approach the technical experts, see whether there's a possibility of reduction in the cost of the project or not. They will say, this is the best possible costing. Then the other options available is to part finance this 100 crore cost. If he has to part finance, then he has to approach the government. Government has to come up through some sort of grants, through concessions. So all this financial due diligence he needs to undertake. And then he has to give his inputs in form of a financial analysis. Then he has to prepare a broad kind of a financial model, to undertake capex, opex, to prepare a kind of a balance sheet, cash flow statement. So all these things he needs to prepare, and all these will be a part of my financial analysis report. Then, as already mentioned earlier, the most important part which is required to be done is the financial management. Financial management is basically like, see, even if like I have to, like government is coming up, like, okay, I'm willing to give you 40 crores as an upfront grant. So I have to make sure whether government has that funds in its capacity to give. Means it's not like even government has to borrow from somewhere, because I have to give the clearance from the, if I look at the debt ratio, the debt which is being allowed by the states also from their finance department, I have to also consider that part also, that how government will also manage these things basically. Like in case government has to come up, whether government will be able to do, because it's not always sometimes that there is a revenue. Like if you must have read recently a new model which is coming up is the hybrid annuity. Hybrid annuities, there's a mixture of broad capex as well as annuity model where some part is being given by the government upfront and some part is being given by the government through in the series of payments. So I also have to make it sure that government also have the funds. It's not that I give the project and later on the government say I don't have the funds to pay to the private investor. The other important part where chartered accountants and these things are coming up these days is a third party audit. So most of the World Bank projects are interested in carrying out this third party audit, basically whether the funds are being properly utilized, properly being monitored, properly dispersed, and all those things from the World Bank side. And some specific, recently in GSTs, the tax compliance has been done or not from the government. So government also plans to have the audits. And as already said, all these infrastructure projects and all these are also prone to audits also. And most of these agencies have a panel of chartered accountants where we can get ourselves empaneled and do audit of all these infrastructure projects. So if I look into these where I am, so I am also working as a financial and PPP expert for last 20 years. So I am basically doing the entire financial due diligence. I am myself doing kind of a transaction flow, preparation of the bid documents, selection of a private investor. All these things I as a chartered accountant are doing because I am being part of our entire team. Like my team and right now which FCI is engaged has a technical expert, has an expert which is a little bit in agriculture, a legal expert and a financial expert. So entire team has one financial expert where I being a CA is part of this. So my project, like earlier contract was for 1 year, now again it has been extended for 1 year. So CAs into this field also are coming up. So this is another opportunity area for the chartered accountants where they can look and block themselves to be a part of a big team and you can say a part of a success story of an infrastructure project if it comes up. Like in a smart city projects, I was there for Ludhiana. I was there. I did some smart city projects for Aligarh also, and many projects I have done for Punjab, for Ludhiana. I did 24/7 water supply project for Ludhiana, where government was seeking funds. That's what I said. Financial management. Government also sometimes don't have funds, so that's why they wanted to seek a loan from the World Bank to finance its portion of commitments. So this is all basically a role of a chartered accountant can also come up in a public-private partnership. So this all basically is a kind of a typical PPP, public-private partnership. So this is all which actually I have to say from my side on the public-private partnership.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable presentation and the examples which you gave from your practical experience were very insightful. I would like to ask the participants if they want to ask something from sir. Any questions available? There are no questions available. Should we conclude the session, sir?
Pooja ma'am is there. I think how I was. She can have some. Because she's from the government side, so she may not be having any question. Rather, I can have some questions from her basically. How well they are coming up with their new. Because I always want, because I have worked a lot for them basically. Pooja ma'am is also not there.
Yes, sir, I'm here only.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah. So, quite knowledgeable, sir. You have shared in-depth knowledge. I think you have covered all the projects, all the aspects of Triple P projects. So, recently, I would like to share that we have done an exhibition center at Ludhiana for a concession period of 99 years.
Great, ma'am.
So, it's like, yeah, it's like giving away for forever, you can say so.
No, it's actually that's exactly happening. Like we are actually coming up with these kind of models only now, because 35 years lease initially, then further 35 years. It's basically we want them to continue.
Exactly.
Because most of these infrastructure projects are not that financially effective.
Lucrative.
Also, lucrative. So many things needs to be come out, means like I was doing for Ludhiana Smart City only the water supply project. So basically, then Ajoy Sharma sir was here, so I used to come and visit and meet him. But that project basically again was from the World Bank funded. Again, the things is that always we needs to have investor, and then we need you can say users also needs to be well educated and identified that they need to pay something
Exactly.
to use that asset. Otherwise, PPP mode will always be a failure kind of a thing.
Right. Right.
Sir, there is a question regarding agriculture sector on post-production and produce management.
Okay.
What is the role of how can agriculture sector play a role in post-production and procurement management?
See, ma'am, that's what actually I was saying, that that's exactly the project that we are doing right now is post-production and procurement management, is that whatever grains and everything is being procured, either it needs to be sold off, and if it's not sold off, it needs to be stored. So that's why we are coming up with the concept of preparation of silos in the market, that where the procurement of the wheat grains can be stored in an efficient scientific manner. It's not that because most of the wheats and grains are generally being destroyed or eaten up by rodents and everything. So we need some scientific kind of a storage space. That's why we are coming up with the concept of silos, where the state departments, where the Food Corporation of India or whosoever is the procuring agency, they can procure the food grains from the farmers, and they can easily store all these food grains in these silos, which is being operated in a scientific manner, so that it can be stored for a longer period, and it is not destroyed, and it can be used as and when required by the government in needy times as well.
Thank you, sir. And sir, what can be the reasons for failure of a large portion of NPAs in banks and financial institutions are infrastructure projects? What are the reasons that they are not succeeding?
So that's what actually, see, ma'am, the most important thing to be a successful is that why it's getting NPA. NPA is basically that they are not able to repay their debts. So why they are not able to repay their debts is basically of the reasons is either my cost of construction got escalated because of delay in whatever reasons was there, or is basically the revenue which I got projected while getting the project, I was not able to achieve that kind of revenue. Like most of the highway projects initially, or sometimes is like the biddings which I have done, I have got a project at a value which is so aggressive, which I am not able to meet. Like, see, because generally a project is bidded out in a two manner. One is either I am seeking something from the government, or I am paying from the government, paying to the government basically. So if I have taken a project aggressively by saying that I will pay something to the government from my own revenues, what I am going to get, and if my revenues itself get badly affected, so I will not be able to meet my commitments in terms of debt, and that is the interest and the principal. So that's why most of these projects basically get affected and they become NPA basically, because I'm not able to meet any of my debt obligations because of the revenue commitments.
Right, sir.
And if I get some kind of you can say a little data on what kind of more sectors that I can share definitely in my coming, if I get a chance another, like what kind of sectors are basically badly affected if in the banks, like either it could be infrastructure, roads, highway sector, or education, or agriculture, or some power sector. So which are most of the sectors where the funds are getting NPAs blocked and not able to meet, then we can work on those broadly the reasons, and then we can have a session on that also basically.
Surely, sir. I don't think there are any further questions. And now I would request CA Gaurav Kumar Gupta, the Vice Chairman cum Secretary of Kurukshetra branch of NIRC of ICI, for vote of thanks. Please, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to everyone. Respected Honorable Speaker C. Nitin Suri ji, Pooja ji, respected Chairman C. Deepak Bansal ji, and our invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks. I, C. Gaurav Kumar Gupta, on behalf of Kurukshetra branch of NIRC of ICI, and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks for today's program. I extend my gratitude to our Honorable Speaker C. Nitin Suri ji and Pooja ji to take out time from their busy schedule to grace the virtual CPE meeting on management accounting insights, public-private partnership, and its importance in infrastructure projects. Sir, we are thankful to you for enlightening us with your knowledge, and today's program is full of knowledge and interesting things. I'm thankful to the organizing team for working hard to make this program successful. I also thanks all the members of different branches of NIRC of ICI for attending the virtual meeting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome, Akiliti. Thank you for having us on board.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.